Hello and welcome. You're watching Race to Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and on the show today, Trump's meeting with Japan's first ever woman Prime Minister, Sane Takaichi, has highlighted the close bond between Washington and Tokyo. According to reports, Japan will invest about $550 billion in the United States. And the two leaders have also managed to seal a deal for rare earths. The devil lies in the details. In India, the Bihar election is gathering steam as the India Alliance has released its manifesto. Believe it or not, it is promising government jobs to every single youth from every family. But let's of course start with the big story that we are tracking, where the American President Donald Trump has hailed the trade deal with Japan, addressing the business leaders in Tokyo. This as he winds up the Japan leg of his Asia tour. Trump now heads to South Korea for the APEC summit, where he will also be meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Speaking at a reception with the Japanese and the US business leaders at the US Embassy in Tokyo, Trump said that his country's relationship with Japan will soon be greater than ever before. And before Trump spoke, the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had announced that Japan will be investing about $490 billion into the United States, including in AI infrastructure. Now, Trump was seeking $550 billion in Japanese investments as part of a trade agreement.
But tonight I'm more confident than ever that the friendship between the United States and Japan is strong as it can be, and it's thriving, it's prosperous, and it'll soon be, I think, greater than ever before.
Now, prior to this, Trump in fact met with Japan's first ever woman Prime Minister Sane Takaichi in Tokyo. The leaders signed two major agreements on trade and critical minerals, pledging a new golden era in the US-Japan equation. The deal signing in fact took place after a brief bilateral meeting between Donald Trump and Takaichi, as the United States and Japan reaffirmed their efforts to deepen economic and strategic cooperation. Now, Trump has also congratulated Takaichi on becoming Japan's first woman leader.
And it's a great honor to be with you, especially so early in what will be, I think, one of the greatest prime ministers. I think you will be one of the great, everything I know from Shinzo and others, you will be one of the great prime ministers. I'd also like to congratulate you on being the first woman prime minister. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, and I want to congratulate you on that. I think that has to be called out. And you're going to do a fantastic job, and we're going to have a fantastic relationship. Thank you very much.
And before the formal signing of the key agreements, Trump in fact joined Takaichi for a welcome ceremony at the Akasaka Palace, where the two leaders reviewed the Guard of Honor and also greeted the attending officials. Takaichi also praised Donald Trump's role in promoting peace in West Asia and resolving the conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, calling it to be unprecedented. Trump arrived in Japan after attending the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur.
In order to make Japan and the United States stronger and more prosperous, I want to work together with President Trump to build a new golden age of the Japan-US alliance. Thank you.
Now, the American President Donald Trump and the Japanese Prime Minister Sane Takaichi in fact visited the US naval base in Yokosuka to tour the aircraft carrier, the USS George Washington. Now, Takaichi in fact flew with Trump on his presidential helicopter to the aircraft carrier that was docked at the Yokosuka naval base near Tokyo, where some 6,000 US sailors awaited their presence. The leaders' joint appearance emphasized the strength of the US-Japan military alliance.
But the cherished alliance between the United States and Japan is one of the most remarkable relationships in the entire world. Really, there's never been anything like it. Born out of the ashes of a terrible war, our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of peace and security in the Pacific. You see it?
Japan marks Trump's second stop on his 5-day Asia tour. Earlier, he was in Malaysia, where he attended the 47th ASEAN summit and participated in the signing of the Cambodia-Thailand peace deal. Now, Trump is all set to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit next. The leaders of the APEC summit are likely to deliberate on several regional trade, security and strategic cooperation across the Pacific.
Takaichi, the first woman to lead Japan, is working to establish a rapport with Trump and steady a rocky trade relationship. She presented him with gold-covered golf balls in order to Ford F-150 placed outside the palace where they meet. Trump is keen to have more U.S. autos in Japan's market. Takaichi has also played up her ties with former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who Trump considered a friend. Abe, a staunch conservative and foreign policy hawk, was assassinated in 2022. Trump met with his widow Tuesday night. The U.S. leader travels to South Korea tomorrow for an Asian economic summit.
The former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has filed an appeal against his 27-year prison sentence for a botched coup after his 2022 election loss. In an 85-page plea filed with the Supreme Court, the former president's lawyers alleged ambiguities, omissions, contradictions and obscurities in the top court's decision and appealed to reduce his 27-year prison term. However, the Brazilian Supreme Court does not have any deadline to examine the appeal arguments. Now, Bolsonaro has been under house arrest since August, and under Brazilian law, he will not be sent to prison until all legal avenues are exhausted. If his appeal fails, then Bolsonaro could request to serve his sentence under house arrest, claiming poor health. Now, the 70-year-old was recently diagnosed with skin cancer and was briefly admitted to hospital last month. He's had multiple health issues and operations in recent years due to complications following a 2018 stabbing in his abdomen while he was campaigning for the presidency. The last month, 4 of the 5 judges of a Supreme Court panel voted to convict Bolsonaro of 5 crimes, including an attempt to violently abolish democracy and organizing a coup. The plot envisaged the assassination of the incumbent president Lula da Silva and Vice President Geraldo Alckmin and Alexander de Moraes, one of the 5 Supreme Court judges who decided Bolsonaro's fate. Now, following his conviction, Bolsonaro supporters and allies in the Congress pushed for an amnesty bill, but the initiative fizzled out after massive protests. And even before his conviction, Bolsonaro had been disqualified from seeking public office until 2030 over his unproven fraud allegations against the country's voting system. The political parties in Myanmar have launched their election campaigns 2 months ahead of the polls, widely seen as an effort to legitimize the army's 2021 coup. Now, the election comes amidst continued violence in many parts of the country and under mounting international criticism. The balloons lifted off into the sky over the Naypyidaw as the Union Solidarity and Development Party, that is the USDP, seen as the military's political arm, kicked off its campaigning with song, dance and also a new slogan, Strong Myanmar. Now, the event, in fact, drew hundreds of supporters, many of them wearing the party's green T-shirts. Senior figures, including cabinet members and former generals, led the rally. Many around the world see this election as an attempt to give a democratic facade to the military's rule.
The election campaign will be conducted in strict compliance with the laws and instructions set by the Union Election Commission.
The voting is set for late December. 57 parties in all have registered for the elections, with 6 parties to contest nationwide. Now, voting will initially be held in only about 102 townships, with about 100 more to be covered in the second phase. The military leader Min Aung Hlaing says that polls can't be held in all 330 townships because of continued fighting in several areas. Notably, the elections will not include the National League for Democracy, the party of Aung San Suu Kyi. The party has been banned since it refused to take part in what it called a sham process. The critics have warned that continued fighting in many parts of the country makes a credible election impossible. The United Nations Secretary General, meeting ASEAN leaders in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, warned that the polls could, of course, deepen Myanmar's crisis. The opposition's armed groups have already vowed to disrupt the vote, and with airstrikes and clashes intensifying, many fear that this campaign itself could fuel more violence. For now, though, the General's Party is marching ahead, determined to secure a victory in an election that is condemned abroad and contested by few at home. Ahead of the first phase of polling in India's poll-bound state of Bihar, the opposition Grand Alliance has released its election manifesto, titled Bihar Ka Tejasvi Pran. Projecting a united front, senior leaders of the alliance were present at the manifesto launch event alongside the RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav, who has been announced as the 7-party alliance's chief ministerial candidate. The manifesto makes several big promises, but the biggest of them is on employment. The manifesto promises one government job for one member of each family in Bihar within 20 days of government formation. Recognizing the increasingly decisive role of women voters, the manifesto promises a monthly aid of nearly about 2,500 rupees for women and permanent appointment of all Jivika community mobilizers. And other promises include free electricity up to 200 units, the reintroduction of old pension scheme for government employees, and development of industrial and economic hubs. Now, the chief ministerial candidate and the RJD leader, Tejasvi Yadav, has claimed that India Bloc's manifesto is a roadmap for Bihar's development. The 243-member Bihar Assembly will go to polls in 2 phases on the 6th of November and the 11th of November, with the results set to be announced on the 14th of November. Now, Jammu and Kashmir's Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has rejected the PDP's proposed land regularization bill. The decision comes despite the PDP's recent support for the National Conference in the Rajya Sabha elections, where the National Conference secured 3 of the 4 available seats from the Union Territory. The PDP president and the former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mahbooba Mufti has sought the ruling party's support for bills that her party had planned to introduce in the Assembly. However, Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has rejected them, arguing that they would amount to legalizing the illegal occupation of state land. Specifically, Abdullah has rejected a bill moved by the PDP MLA Wahidur Rahman Para, which sought to grant property rights over state and grazing lands. He stated that the government could not legitimize unlawful encroachments on public property. Abdullah has urged Para to withdraw the bill, emphasizing that it contravened on the existing laws and land regulations.
We cannot legalize illegal occupation of state land. On the surface, it looks easy. If someone has constructed a house on government land, give the land to him. Last time also, the government made a scheme to convert leasehold into freehold, which was known as Roshni scheme. The aim was to grant freehold to those who had leasehold before militancy.
However, the PDP MLA Wahidur Rahman Para refused to withdraw the bill, accusing the government of rejecting it for political motives. He also challenged the Chief Minister and said that you are opposing it to align with your own policies because the Bharatiya Janata Party labels it land jihad. Don't fear them. Napara insisted that the bill was intended to grant relief to families who have lived or cultivated these lands for decades, while the government has countered that established legal procedures could not be circumvented. The Chief Minister Omar Abdullah reiterated that land rights must be addressed through lawful channels alone, and the government would not endorse any measure that risked encouraging further encroachments on state property.
Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir Umar Abdullah today took a tough stand in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly after he rejected the PDP's land regularization bill that was tabled by the PDP MLA Wahid Para. PDP had recently voted in favor of the National Conference in the recently held Rajya Sabha election and had called for an assurance from the National Conference that they will support them in the bills that PDP will table in Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. But the Chief Minister today took a tough stand and said no to the bill. With video journalist Feroz, Idris Sloan for WION World is One.
The Ivory Coast's incumbent president, Alassane Ouattara, has been re-elected to a fourth term with a commanding victory margin, according to the provisional results announced by the country's electoral commission. The 83-year-old former international banker secured an 89.7% of the votes in a contest in which his two greatest rivals were barred from contesting. The turnout was close to about 100% in Ouattara's northern strongholds. The political veteran also did well in the traditionally pro-opposition areas in the south and parts of the economic hub Abidjan, where the polling stations had been almost empty.
Mr. Alassane
Ouattara, 3,759 Satin 030 votes, or 89.77% of the votes cast. Mr. Alassane Ouattara has been provisionally declared the winner in the first round, with 89.77% of the votes cast.
89,77% des suffrages exprimés.
Now, one of Ouattara's rivals, the former international banking CEO Tidjane Thiam, slammed the polls, saying that they were not a true election and called on the supporters to peacefully win back democracy. Another rival, former First Lady Simeon Yvette Gabo, who was on the ballot taking 2.42% of the vote, criticized the turnout figure as incorrect. The opposition has rejected Ouattara's legitimacy and has called for new elections. However, Ouattara's supporters remained defiant. Shortly after the provisional results were announced, celebrations began at the party headquarters with supporters marching, dancing and singing.
We have won, and it's truly a joy for us as young members of the party to know that we contributed to the victory of Dr. Alassane Ouattara. It's that joy that drives us this afternoon.
Now, this is Ouattara's third consecutive decisive victory after the much closer election that brought him to power in 2011. His predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, had refused to acknowledge defeat in that race, sparking a 4-month war that killed nearly about 3,000 people. Ouattara has since overseen a period of relative stability and steady economic growth in the world's biggest cocoa producer. Now, the streets of Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, erupted in fury after the announcement of Paul Biya's 8th term as the president of the country. At the age of 92, Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of the state, was declared the winner for an unprecedented 8th term, extending his rule to over 4 decades, winning 53.66% of the votes. The new 7-year term could keep the veteran leader in power until he's 100 years old. Now, for Cameroon's predominantly young population, most of whom have only known one leader, this result was not just a rejection but a flashpoint. The supporters of the opposition candidate Isa Bakari Chiroma poured onto the streets alleging electoral fraud and rejecting the decades-long political stagnation. Confronting security forces, they chanted some provocative slogans and resorted to building some fiery barricades.
We want our president. I want my president. That's what I want. I want my president. That's all we want. We don't have weapons. We're on the move like this. We have nothing. I don't know why we went to vote. Better still, we're telling Cameroonians not to vote again until the prince leaves, before we resume voting in Cameroon.
Now, over the past few days, dozens of opposition supporters, activists and leaders have been arrested as protests have continued. And according to reports, about 4 lives were lost in the clashes, infuriating the protesters. And addressing his supporters outside of his home in Garoua, Cameroon's opposition leader Isa Chiroma led a prayer for those who were killed in the clashes. He claimed that security forces had opened fire on civilians outside of his residence, resulting in 2 fatalities. He also claimed that about 10 snipers were posted on rooftops. Tanzania heads to polls to elect its next president amidst widespread allegations by the opposition that the ruling party and also the Electoral Commission intend to rig the upcoming elections. Now, Tanzania's largest opposition force, Chadema, has boycotted the presidential election, citing a demand for fundamental electoral reforms, while the presidential candidate for the second largest opposing party, the Alliance for Change and Transparency, has been disqualified by the Independent National Electoral Commission. With no heavyweight opposition candidates clear to compete, critics have alleged that the vote is less like a contest and more like a coronation for the incumbent president, Samia Suluhu. The 65-year-old became East African nation's first woman head of the state after the death of the sitting president, John Magufuli. Although Tanzania is a multi-party democracy, a version of one party, Hassan's Party of the Revolution, has been in power since the country's independence from Britain back in 1961. In recent times, the Tanzanian authorities have cracked down on opposition leaders, civic groups, journalists and others in what Amnesty International has described as a climate of fear ahead of general elections.
Therefore, there are a number of concerns because the process itself is very opaque, no transparency whatsoever. The rules have been bent, the rules have been encroached. Everything is there. It's just very sad that, well, the Electoral Commission, ruling party, could do something which is a blatant violation of the law itself.
In the country's semi-autonomous archipelago of Zanzibar, some 700,000 islanders will vote for both mainland presidential candidates and a local president. Polling stations have already opened for early voting. Zanzibar, which is home to roughly 1.9 million people, has a history of tense elections plagued by violence and irregularities, but calm has prevailed so far.
Normally in any election there is always a ruling party and strong opposition, but it seems the strong opposition party decided not to participate, which is not a problem to me, as long as other opposition parties are participating.
All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what is making headlines in the world of elections and politics. The exiled Catalan separatist leader Carles Puigdemont has decided to withdraw his crucial support for Spain's minority left-wing government, throwing its future into doubt. The support of the Catalans' pro-independence party, Junts, had proven decisive after an inconclusive 2023 election, allowing Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to stay on for another term. In India's poll-bound state of Bihar, the Election Commission has issued a show-cause notice to Prashant Kishore, the leader of the Jan Suraj party, after the poll panel found evidence that Kishore's name appeared on electoral polls in both Bihar and West Bengal. Now, Prashant Kishore had been asked to submit his explanation within 3 days regarding as to how his name came to be registered in two separate state electoral rolls. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. This is Mohammed Saleh signing off. Thanks for watching.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yowon.com.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall